well-known Indian journalist, writer, and television presenter Rajdeep Sardesai's latest and third in a trilogy of books about India's three general elections since 2014, offers a detail-rich look inside the third parliamentary election earlier this year. Titled 2024, The Election That Surprised India, examines the country's fractious political landscape from many vantage points where Rajdeep brings to bear his years of expertise having extensively reported the last 10 elections. Rajdeep spoke to Mayank Chhaya Reports about his book and beyond. Welcome to MCR, Rajdeep. It's a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, Mayank. Good to see you after a while and always a pleasure talking to you.
And many congratulations on your latest book, 2024, The Election That Surprised India.
Thank you, Mayank. It's doing rather well, and all I can say is I hope more and more people read it and give me feedback, critical or otherwise. That's fine.
I want to begin with two specific details in your book before I broaden the questions a bit. In a sense, they are related. You write about a meeting in June 2019 between Prime Minister Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah, and NSA Ajit Doval, the so called P3 as you describe them. And the meeting was about the revocation of Articles 370 and 35A. Tell me a bit more about it because the next question has sort of an interconnectivity to that.
Look, the fact is that this is a very centralized government. Decisions are taken by a very small group in this government. And I think the Article 370 decision to effectively abrogate it was part of this entire attempt to ensure that uh, secrecy was given topmost priority, which meant that only the Prime Minister, Amit Shah, and Ajit Doval knew exactly what was happening. Everyone else, including senior secretaries to the government, were only being spoken to on a need-to-know basis. The government's claim is that when you're taking a major decision like this, which can have huge repercussions, you cannot give it to a wider group. A similar policy was followed in 2016 when currency was demonetized, and the same principle was adopted for 370. Even the governor of Jammu and Kashmir was only informed the day before the decision for revocation was taken, and he wasn't even informed till the very end about the decision to effectively downsize Jammu and Kashmir into a union territory. So I think it reflects the manner in which the Modi Shah system of governance operates, very tightly controlled, deeply centralized.
But is that's extraordinary? I mean, a country of 1.4 billion presided over by three men taking a decision of this magnitude I was amazed when I read that. It's almost like a throwaway reference early on in your book.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, I think if you see, even when it comes to the COVID lockdown, again, another major decision which was taken, really, again, with even the health ministry not fully, or certainly the state health ministers, or indeed the chief ministers, are not being taken into confidence. It was again taken at the center by a very small group, a decision again which had huge repercussions. It's the way the Modi model operates. You can, you can suggest that it's perhaps a strange way of governing a country of 1.4 billion people. They will believe that since they've been in power for 10 years, it's worked for them because it ensures that they virtually control this otherwise chaotic political system.
There is another somewhat. I think it is connected. You may not agree with it, but you also make a reference in 1998. Amit Shah, as a young politician, rejecting the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government's decision to go nuclear, and his argument being, if we go nuclear, inevitably Pakistan will go nuclear, and that forecloses the option for Akhand Bharat because then there is equity between two nuclear-armed neighbors. Now, again, that's quite a striking detail that you have just incidentally mentioned it. So I see 370 and Akhand Bharat as sort of there is a broader ideological connection.
Well, look, I think the one thing that strike has always struck me about Amit Shah is that Amit Shah stands out to me as a politician deeply committed to a certain ideological belief system that is ingrained in the Sangh Parivar. The belief in Akhand Bharat is one of those ideological belief systems. I would even venture so far to say that even Prime Minister Modi even though he was an RSS pracharak, is actually far more politically flexible when it comes to ideology. He's willing at times for power to compromise on ideology. Not so with Amit Shah. And even therefore, when he wrote that letter, he was a young first-time MLA in Gujarat to Prime Minister Vajpayee, questioning the decision to go nuclear, or indeed the manner in which he sort of explained the decision to revoke Article 370 or bringing a Citizenship Amendment Act. With Amit Shah, you see much more the hard-nosed political ideologue come strategist. And therefore, I'm not surprised that Amit Shah is the one who sort of spearheaded the move to revoke Article 370, because he's the kind of leader who believes that if you have voted in a Hindutva government, then it must pursue the core Hindutva ideological agenda.
To broaden a bit, Prime Minister Modi will be close to 80 by the time he finishes his third term. I think it is conceivable that this is his farewell term. That being the case, do you think the BJP has probably peaked electorally?
Look, first of all, we are making a huge assumption that this is his last term. What will Prime Minister Modi will be 79 in 2029? That's young for Indian politicians. I mean, Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister when he was in 80s. So was Morarji Desai. So let's not rule out the fact that Mr. Modi will push for re-election even in 2029. I don't see Mr. Modi, frankly, going anywhere as of now. I don't think he's in any mood to relinquish power. So, look, I think the BJP brand Modi, in my view, is not as powerful as it was 10 years ago. I think when Mr. Modi came to power between 2014, he peaked in 2019. That 2019 election, particularly after the strikes in Balakot inside Pakistan, marked the peak, I believe, of Mr. Modi's personal popularity. Since then, as we've seen, there have been state elections where when Mr. Modi is not on the ticket, the BJP is not done as well. However, even though Mr. Modi's brand may have lost some of its luster, he remains Neta number one. And more crucially, the BJP is undoubtedly the dominant party of our times. And the machine of the BJP, the election machine, is still more or less intact. The ability to have this large cadre, the RSS, the resources to build this sort of remorseless, relentless machine, that hasn't that may have frayed at times along the edges, but the core is still intact. And that's why I believe even in the next decade, the BJP will remain the principal pole of Indian national politics.
Of the 900 million odd eligible voters this time, some 65.79% voted. That's about 590 odd million people who voted, of which 36.5%, which is 216 million, voted for the BJP. In a country of 1.4 billion and 900 million voters, 260 million people, 16 million people voting is not a resounding mandate. And yet, here we are.
Look, it's the way the system is. The
Right.
system is effectively first past the post. It's, barring the odd election, the Congress, even in its pomp, never crossed 50% of the popular vote. By and large, the Congress also was a party which would win with what, 40% plus vote in many a general election. I, I think that the BJP, while you could argue, has still not become a pan India party in the truest sense of the word, to the extent that there are states in the south where the BJP still hasn't made a major breakthrough, although they won their first ever seat this time in Kerala. Uh, I would still say there is little doubt in my mind that the BJP uh, is the principal pole of Indian politics. And the opposition's big challenge over the next 10 years will remain: how do you define a cohesive narrative, build a strong organization and a strong leadership that can challenge the BJP on all three levels: organizational, ideological, and leadership. It is despite the fact that they won what, 37% of the vote over the three elections. They have won, even in this election, more than the Congress has won in the last three elections. 240 seats is what the BJP won this time. The Congress won 99 in this election, 50 odd in 2019, and 40 odd in 2014. Add the three numbers, they don't even make up 240. So the BJP, frankly, even in this election where they didn't get 272, still won more seats than the Congress has won in the last three elections. So there is a huge gap between the two principal parties even now.
It's like when Don Bradman got out at 99, it was considered failure, right?
Well, yes, but the interesting aspect is for the Congress party, Mayank, in this election, 99 was seen as a success. It's almost
Yes.
as if, you see, the Congress survived in that 2024. They didn't revive. I think that distinction is important to make. This was an election where people were writing off the Congress and suggesting it would do even worse than last time. So for the Congress to do as well as they did, I think gave them a sense of a bit of a breather, but it's still way beyond, way back from where they need to be. I mean,
Correct.
I think, and therefore, for the Congress to see 2024 as a success would be a misconception, a misinterpretation. And I think that's why they paid a price in state elections in the second half of the year. They got carried away by what they saw in 2024, when the fact is they are still very much party number two to the BJP.
Early on in your book, you issue not just mea culpa, but mea maxima culpa, as it were. You said you were swayed by the Modi ki guarantee drumbeat. Having followed his career so extensively and being familiar with his characteristic bombast, why did you fall for it?
The image that he had created was so powerful and overwhelming in the last 10 years. It's dwarfed all other potential challengers. Uh, this is a machine, as I said, which is so resourceful. Everywhere you went, any corner of India in the build up to this election, uh, it was Modi ki guarantee. It was also a build up, remember, in the backdrop of the Ram Temple Pran Pratishtha, where Modi was the sort of primary yajman. All of that gave the impression that there is Modi only. He was able to almost for a while invisibilize the opposition. And when that happens, you tend to get carried away. I mean, you tend to believe that this man is Superman and he can do
No, but
anything. I was
I'm
looking
saying
and I've quoted.
someone like you is clearly astute and someone who understands the Gujarati mindset perhaps better than most journalists, except me, since I come from Ahmedabad. I would make that boast. But I'm saying I was a bit taken aback when I read that. And the second one, and I applaud you for your candor, where you mentioned that maybe we should have listened more intently to the counter narratives. It's interesting that
You know,
twice you say that.
Mayank, it's very interesting also. On the 12th of May, 2024, I did a video blog where I mentioned that the BJP was not in the kind of comfortable position they thought they were in. This is a fortnight before the final phase of elections. I had traveled a fair bit, and if you see the blog, most of what I've said in that blog actually transpired. In fact, it was titled, Can the BJP Touch 272? That the real challenge for the BJP now is even to reach halfway mark. Very few others were saying that at that moment. However, in the last week, once I saw what the exit pollsters were suggesting to me, I realized that maybe I hadn't traveled enough. Maybe there were wings I hadn't seen. But honestly, after Uttar Pradesh, traveling through Uttar Pradesh, I could see that there was a challenge mounting to this Modi dominance. But even so, I was unwilling to accept that the BJP would falter because the BJP's machine has developed this sense of invincibility about it over the last decade. And the Congress has seemingly been so weak in direct fights that you seem to believe the worst about the Congress and the best about the BJP. Now, you could argue that the Gujarati in me should have played safe. I'm born in Ahmedabad, although I'm a Maharashtrian, but the Gujarati in me seem to be caught up in a bit of a bull run rather than being a bit of a bear and being a bit more cautious before sort of upping the Modi stock in that build up to the final phase.
Right. Interestingly, I was in Ahmedabad for about 2.5 months in the run up to the elections. I didn't stay on for the elections. And Rajdeep, I was astonished at the kind of conversations that I had with all kinds of people, and all of them almost uniformly, and they were all strong Modi supporters. All of them still said that he's not going to make it this time on his own. And they said, for us, it's him, but we know that he's in trouble. It was quite remarkable. Again, Ahmedabadi mindset kicked in at that point.
Look, then I would say that the Gujarati mindset perhaps knew a bit more than I did. That they saw something that many of us didn't. Uh, look, how many people would have thought that Narendra Modi in Varanasi would find his margin cut to 150,000 votes?
Right.
Uh, Show me one person. It's very easy now in hindsight, of course, to say, look, so and so said that, this is not a sort of Modi canter. But at the time itself, I think because, as I said, the backdrop, the Ram temple ceremony, the disarray in the opposition ranks, Mr. Modi's sort of personal popularity, which is still there. Make no mistake, Mr. Modi is still a very popular leader. Given all that, it was difficult to believe that someone like that could actually suffer the kind of reversal of fortunes to an extent that he did eventually. I know he's still prime minister. It's a remarkable hat trick in many ways. But there were very few, barring one or two, who suggested that the BJP would go as low as 240.
This is an interesting segue for me. You make a fairly strong reference to the Prime Minister's absurd claim that he's non biological and hence ordained by God to do what he does, was followed by so many people as axiomatic. I mean, how do you see it as a journalist? And it didn't seem to affect him in terms of eventually coming back for a third term.
Look, I think the media has much to answer for. In fact, I look at that 20. I look at chapter 14 in my book at the way the media gets managed, and I think part of the management of the media is to constantly play the drumbeat of how Mr. Modi is invincible. It almost becomes self-perpetuating when you constantly invisibilize the opposition, marginalize the opposition, question the opposition, and at the same time are cheerleading the government. Then you almost are part of the of this army of supporters that the prime minister has been able to rustle up. So I think a lot of hard questions need to be asked as a result of all we've seen in the last 12 months about the media itself, about our ability to predict electoral outcomes, about the nature of our profession in terms of not telling truth to power, but instead of that, questioning the opposition. All of these, I think, are relevant questions to ask. But who's going to really ask them now? Because the general, particularly after the BJP won Maharashtra and Haryana, it seems as if we are almost back to square one, where once again the media, seems to believe that Mr. Modi is here forever or the BJP is here forever.
In the studio habitat that you dwell in your professional life, where 800-pound anchor gorillas thumb their ideological chests, how do you navigate? Because at your heart, I think you are still a very detailed oriented print journalist.
Mayank, I'm glad you said that. Yes, I think print is my pehla pyar. I do look at, I do like to sort of analyze and step back and introspect and write a column every fortnight. But uh, I have seen in the last 10, 20 years in particular, the media becoming an extension of the state almost to a large extent. And the management of the media, particularly by this government, has been one of its big skills. Their ability to a mix of fear and carrot, or carrot and stick, whatever you want to call it, has been to ensure that large sections of the media fall in line. Some may do it out of conviction, many others do it out of convenience. Whether they do it out of conviction or out of convenience, I think it's deeply troubling if the media becomes this sort of uh, 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 becomes an outrider for whoever is in power. In this case, of course, the BJP, because now that the BJP has learned the art of managing the media so astutely, any government in India, and we are seeing it even with some state governments, will do the same thing in browbeating, intimidating, and getting the media to fall in line. So you have fewer and fewer stories that actually question the media, that puncture holes in government narratives, whether at the state or the center, and thereby, I think, do disservice to democracy.
That means there is no redemption now. You cannot reverse what has happened since 2014.
That's one way of look. That's well, my first book in this trilogy was 2014, the election that changed India, and I think it has changed India. And one of the areas it's changed is the way the media approaches politics and covering politics and politicians. We were less awestruck or less willing to sort of genuflect in front of netas, I believe, in the manner that we've done in the last decade, where there's been a general sense that the media, at least the mainstream media, is expected to fall in line to ensure that an individual gets maximum coverage, to a disproportionate extent. Uh, that is one of the changes that I've seen, and it is troubling. But I remain, optimistic. In a country as diverse as India, and diversity is, I think, one of our great strengths. You will always see dissenting voices also rearing their head, man, every now and then. And those dissenting voices, I don't think can be silenced forever.
Just last couple of things. I know you have to leave. We will perhaps someday do a bigger one. Oscar Wilde said, "Beauty needs no explanation." To some extent, it is true of celebrity as well. You, whether you like it or not, it is built around you. I mean, when you show up in public, there is instant visual recognition. And as a print journalist, lifelong print journalist, I'm a bit baffled. How do you handle that?
The good news, of course, there is that because I've been I think I see myself as a lifelong journalist and who started off in print, and therefore I've seen the other side as well. The staff reporter bylines. I've gone through all that. I've gone through the grind. Celebrityhood, if you want to use that word, just seemed to happen. It's not something, therefore, as I that defines my identity of who I am. Uh, I saw celebrityhood when my father was a test cricketer, was celebrated after the 1971 tour. That
Indeed,
to
yeah.
my mind is that to my mind is genuine celebrityhood. Journalists, frankly, we sparkle in the shadows of those who are in power. Uh, the fact that I come on television, obviously, the rise of television in the last 20 years, 30 years has been one of the phenomenon of Indian media. The fact that we have these primetime anchors who sort of become larger than life, not just in India, but where you are in the United States, you've had over the years larger than life anchors, particularly because now shows are defined by the anchor's persona. I think that's the big change. Earlier, the show was supreme, not the anchor. Now, the anchor becomes larger than life and the show goes into the backdrop. These are things that have happened and I've seen them happen in front of me. I'm not complaining, but as I said, I know where I come from, I know who I am. The day I become, start believing in my own, look, I'm only as good as my platform. Tomorrow, if I don't have my platform of the 9 p.m. news, I move on, do other things in my life. I will accept that as well. I will accept the fact that you will then move from celebrityhood to relative, I guess, hopefully anonymity. But I'm happy that I can use my name to to put my book forward, my ideas forward. I believe the book is more important than the author. The show should be more important than the anchor.
And to conclude, Rajdeep, it's slightly a broader philosophical observation. I've said it for over 30 years now. When the right wing of any political landscape anywhere in the world says something, I think media and everybody else absolutely must take it both literally and seriously because they 100% mean it. It's been shown in this country, it's been shown in Europe. Left liberals, people tend to be a bit wishy-washy, and it's in the nature of the beast, I suppose. But I'm surprised that even here, when Trump says something, people don't take it literally and seriously when he absolutely means it. Do you think we have made a similar mistake in India?
That's a brilliant question, I think, Mank. I think you that's a very, very strong point that you make, which deserves greater sort of discussion. Whether the rise of these populist, strong arm, right wing leaders has changed the nature of politics in different parts of the world. I mean, the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy today are effectively ruled by strong right wing populist leaders. Where does that leave certain democratic institutions? Because these individuals believe they are larger than the institutions they represent. And to my mind, that is, Mayank, deeply troubling that, when institutions are undermined, they have significant long-term repercussions. I think the kind of politics that Trump has waged in America, the kind of politics Narendra Modi has waged in India, will have serious long-term repercussions for institutions, including, as we just discussed, the media. But we could look at other institutions, enforcement agencies, even the judiciary, and the legislature. The attempt being made to reduce parliament to a notice board. I'm sure when Trump comes to power, he'd try and do the same with the US Congress. He'd bulldoze his way
Indeed.
through any checks and balances. So I think this is something we need to reflect upon because voters clearly don't seem to mind. Voters seem okay with the idea that they have these individual strongmen. They don't seem to invest as much as they should in certain democratic values and traditions as voters. Uh, I find that troubling as a let's say, as someone who's a constitutionalist, if I may be allowed to use any ism, I say I'm a constitutionalism is what I believe in. Uh, and I worry as we enter our 75th year of the Republic next month, we complete 75 years. I wonder whether the Constitution and its values matter as much to voters who become more and more transactional. I think both in the US and in India, voters are becoming more and more transactional. What is in it for me?
Right.
And therefore it's less about sort of the finer values and ideological debates that I was hoping would shape the politics of the 21st century. Maybe I'm speaking like a liberal who feels under completely sort of being badgered into a corner by the rise of this right wing populism. But right wing populism does worry me because it's constantly searching for an enemy figure. In India, they found it in minorities, in America, in immigrants. All of these are very, very troubling questions, Mayan.
Absolutely. And I'm an in your face liberal. I have never stayed a step back from that. About 30 years ago, K.R. Malkani, I'm sure you knew him, fine
Yes,
man, very interesting
yes.
man. I called him Hindu revisionist, and he called me a pseudo secularist, and we both laughed. But you can
Yeah,
no longer have that kind of conversation.
that can't, yes, absolutely. Well put. Those conversations are now missing. I traveled once with Malkani ji, interestingly, to Pakistan. We took a delegation across parties to Pakistan. He was part of it. I don't know whether that will ever happen today, but you're absolutely right. You could have a dialogue, a debate, a conversation with the likes of Mr. Malkani. I'm not sure you can have that kind of a healthy dialogue debate with the politicians of today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rajdeep. I really enjoyed our quick conversation. Hope someday we'll do a bigger one. And I think you're going to Australia, right?
I'm on my way to Australia. I leave tonight to watch the Boxing Day Test, India versus Australia. It's been a great childhood dream that I'm fulfilling. Being there in front of with 100,000 people should be quite a spectacular sight on the 26th.